Fox News host Will Cain invited former DNC chair Jaime Harrison onto his show, spent most of the interview interrogating him about something Harrison said, I was never booked to discuss that. And then as soon as Jaime Harrison calls him out for it, Will Cain ends the interview. But the best part is what happened the next day, because Will Cain went back and checked, and it turned out that Jaime Harrison was right. He wasn't booked to talk about DSA. He was booked to talk about the South Carolina primary. So take a look at how this fell apart. Then we'll get to the apology from Will Cain.
Well, when Donald Trump literally sat down for dinner with Nick Fuentes, right, a white nationalist, anti-Semitic, Holocaust denier, do you believe that Nick Fuentes represents every Republican? Do you think that
it's not the first time I've heard this analogy invoked, Jamie. And there's got to be, Jamie, hold on. No. That's inflammatory, and I'm going to respond to it so this conversation stays honest. It's not the first time I've heard that analogy, and you have to have the intellectual consistency and honesty to distinguish a dinner from a Senate candidate.
What is inflammatory is this. You invite somebody to come on your show to talk about the South Carolina Republican primary, and you don't even talk about the South Carolina Republican primary. This is the reason why you guys are disingenuous.
No, there's no reason.
Don't invite me to come on your show to talk about what. Listen,
Jamie,
don't invite me to come talk on your show about the South Carolina Republican primary, and you spend all your time talking about the DSA, which I'm not even a member of. So
listen to me for a second.
Talk about the DSA. Invite
all right, I'm going to have to cut you off, Jamie, while I'm about to tell you, if my staff told you that we were talking, Jamie, you can't hear me while you're talking. If my staff told you we were going to talk about the Senate in the Republican primary, then I apologize. I was under no pretense that I'd be talking to you today about a Republican primary. I don't know why I would book a former Democratic. All right, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're talking at the same time. It does nobody a service, not you, not me, or not the audience. But I would never be interested in hearing from a former DNC chair. Thank you, Jaime Harrison. I appreciate the time. I would hope for us to go better in the future. I would never book the former head of the DNC to talk.
So he cuts it. Now, Jaime Harrison, turns out, had a point. Harrison is not a member of DSA. His complaint was, you told me we were going to talk about the South Carolina Republican primary, and instead you brought me on. You tried to turn me into a prop for a completely different segment about how radical the Democratic Party has become because 5% of DSA candidates have won their primaries. Now, Cain initially reacted as though what Harrison was saying made no sense whatsoever. And he said, if my staff told you that was the topic, then I will apologize. But I have no idea why anyone would book the former DNC chair to talk about a Republican primary. He cuts him off and he ends the segment. Afterwards, Harrison went even further and he basically said, like, lose my number, Will, never call me again. But here's where this gets really good. Will Cain apparently decided to check. Good for him, right? He actually went and looked. He went back. He reviewed the communications between his producers and Jaime Harrison. And it turns out that Jaime Harrison was right. And Will Cain came back onto television. I apologize that this video is blurry. For some reason, I just wasn't able to find it in more than 480p. And Will Cain went on TV, and he did what I guess you can call an apology. When you really don't want to admit the other guy was right, it's a sort of apology. First, really quick, a word from our sponsor. Plastic pollution demands systemic action. One big difference you can make is reducing single-use plastics in your household waste. Our sponsor, Blueland, makes it easy. They've got eco-friendly Power Duo laundry tablets. These are pre-measured, mess-free tablets, no plastics, no microplastics. As is always the case with Blueland's eco-friendly cleaning products, you don't sacrifice results when you go green. Blueland's Power Duo laundry tablets have a dual layer design. So you've got stain fighting enzymes and odor fighting technology. This is for those tougher loads of laundry, the sweaty workout clothes, the musty towels and food stains, kid messes also. Drop a tablet in your washer, wash as usual. It's also hypoallergenic and safe for sensitive skin. Check out Blueland's lineup of sustainable dish, laundry, and household cleaning products, which they reduce single-use plastic and use ingredients that are safer for the planet. Blueland's formulas are Safer Choice certified by the EPA, safety certified by Cradle to Cradle, and cruelty-free certified by Leaping Bunny. Blue Land is a company that cares about our planet and your health. I love having them as a sponsor. My family uses Blue Land products at home. Get 15% off your first order at blueland.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. Now back to the video. Let's take a listen.
I want to clean something up from yesterday, my conversation with Jaime Harrison, the former chairman of the DNC. We had a contentious conversation about democratic socialism and its influence inside the Democratic Party. At the end, Jaime accused me of lying to him, of baiting.
Nasty accusation.
And switching him. He said he'd been told he was coming on to talk about the South Carolina Republican primary. And he repeated that accusation afterward on X. Now, in the moment, I told him I had no idea what he was talking about, and I didn't. But I also told him that if we'd misled him, I would apologize. So I went back and reviewed the communication leading up to the interview. Nobody explicitly promised Jaime that the South Carolina primary would be the subject of the interview. There was no intentional bait and switch. That's not who I am, and that's not who we are as a show.
Of course.
But I can also see how Jaime came away believing that was what we would be talking about. That was
It's weird because it's like, why would he come away believing that if that was not part of the communication? It's really weird.
Reasonable expectation based on the communication. So I reject the idea that anybody lied to Jaime or deliberately misled him. The truth is much more mundane. There was a breakdown in communication. I would never let a guest dictate what I can ask him. Had that been the deal, I would not have agreed to the interview. But that's separate from what Jaime, I think, reasonably believed. The communication failure came from my show, and ultimately, I own it. So, Jaime, I understand why you felt misled. I know what it's like, what it feels like, if you thought you were ambushed on TV, and I understand why you were angry. And for that, I owe you an apology.
It's funny because he kind of throws in this non sequitur about I would never tell anyone what the questions are ahead of time. We've dealt with this a lot on this program. Occasionally, we are asked for the questions ahead of time, and we say, of course not. We have never sent the questions ahead of time. And only once, to be totally honest, years ago, did saying we're not going to give you the questions lead to the guest saying, well, then I'm not going to do the interview. I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't even a big name. It would be totally uninteresting, whoever it was. It was like a producer of some kind or something. In any case, we do stick to the topics we say we are going to bring up. And I think that that's completely legitimate. And I expect the same when I'm invited on other shows. If I get invited on, Piers Morgan, and in fact, he's done this. If I get, funnily enough, if I get invited onto Piers Morgan to talk about, the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, and then Piers springs on me stuff about trans athletes, which he did to me multiple times when I showed up to talk about other things, I would say that that's below the belt. That doesn't seem appropriate. And the way that you behave with integrity on this is you're just honest with people about the topics you want to discuss. But you say that, listen, it's not even about giving you the questions ahead of time. And we often say the questions are really conversational. It's not like I have the questions written down per se. The questions will be dictated by the answers that are given. But if you're under the impression that the topic is the South Carolina primary and the host has no idea about that whatsoever, there is a problem there. And this was a very cut and dry thing. Harrison says, you invited me to talk about X. You only spoke to me about Y. Cain says, that's ridiculous. Why would we possibly invite you on to talk about X? You're a former Democratic chair. Why would you talk about a Republican primary? Maybe that makes sense. But then he checks the emails and he goes, listen, we didn't do anything deliberate, but I can understand why you thought that that's what you were coming on to discuss. Now, to Will Cain's credit, he's at least acknowledging the screw up, because there are a lot of people in political media who would pretend it never happened, but that doesn't erase the original clip's kind of revealing nature, which is that Harrison wasn't refusing to answer difficult questions. He was saying, this was not why I was supposedly here. The premise of the interview was different than what I was told. And then after the cameras were off, they check the communications and they go, oh, I guess Jaime Harrison wasn't so crazy after all. Check the booking notes before cutting off the guest for mentioning them. We've dealt with this. I've dealt with it as a guest. If nothing else, at least Will Cain sort of said, I get why Jaime was confused.